Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Radio. Show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio for Saturday, the 13th of February, 2016. It's almost Valentine's Day, everybody. I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every week to bring you the latest information on medical cannabis and recreational adult use cannabis from all over the world. And this week, kind of an interesting conversation. I'm going to call it a conversation, not an interview. I was speaking with a gentleman from Australia on Skype, Adam Miller, who's an advocate down there and a cannabis fan, as well as an advocate in fighting for legalization in medical. And we were just talking on Skype, and it turned out to be a really interesting conversation. So I asked him if it was okay to play it on the show, and he said sure. So it's not really an interview. It's just a conversation about what's happening in Australia. So I think they're going to be a huge part of the cannabis industry. But first up, as always, I've got news for you. 1, 2, 3.
I've got news for you.
And starting off right here in New Mexico, marijuana legalization is headed to the Senate floor. This is by Joey Peters and the New Mexico Political Report at newmexicopoliticalreport.com. A proposal that would allow voters to weigh in on legalizing recreational marijuana passed its second test and will now advance to the Senate floor. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted 5-4 in favor of the proposed constitutional amendment on party lines, making the first time marijuana legalization has ever made it to the floor, either chamber in the New Mexico legislature. The vote tonight, that was the last night, made history because it never passed through two committees, says Emily Kaltenbach, Executive Director of the Drug Policy Alliance, New Mexico, said following the vote, it's really important. It's a really important step, and it shows just the momentum of the decision, and the will of the people have finally been listened to. The legislation passed the Senate Rules Committee earlier in the week, when the legislation passed the Rules Committee also in 2015. It was the first time such legislation had ever passed in one committee. So hopefully the conversation on the floor will be good, and we can get this thing to the voters in November. That's the way it should be. It shouldn't be about politics. It should be about what the citizens of your state or your country wants to do. Let's see. Next up. Okay, so this is a very interesting clip. This is from Bill Maher's Real-Time HBO's show, and they have their own YouTube channel, and they post little clips every once in a while. This is a little bit longer than a little clip, but I thought it was very interesting, and a lot of important things are said, obviously some with a little bit of humor. So this is just the other day, Real Time with Bill Maher, new rules for the love of bud.
And finally, new rule for this Valentine's Day. People who love marijuana have to do me this favor. Stop treating it like you could never lose it. You know, not a week goes by without someone asking me to get into the pot business with them. Don't get left behind, they tell me. We can make a fortune selling marijuana or Billy Buds or Silly Billy's Wacky Tobacco. Everybody seems 100% certain that a completely weed-legal America on the model of gay marriage is right around the corner. Yes, the pot lovers say it's only legal in 4 states now, but Bill, the rest are gonna fall like dominoes. I hear it all the time. They're gonna fall like dominoes. Dominoes. Hey, let's order from Domino's. Okay. You hippies need to get your head out of your grass. Progress doesn't just automatically snowball. Think of other rights we never thought would be rolled back. Look what's happened with abortion. Since 1991, 81% of abortion clinics have closed. In Mississippi, it's easier to get good Thai food. In Mississippi. In Texas, you have to drive 500 miles and sit through an informational video where Ted Cruz calls you a whore. So too with pot. In 2013, LA had nearly 700 dispensaries. But since then, over 500 have been shut down. And dispensaries still can't get banking services because they're too skeevy. The banks, not the dispensaries. And we still do not have a major politician who will simply say, legalize it nationally, period. President Obama has tried to move the needle a little. He says pot is not very different from cigarettes and no more dangerous than alcohol, but it's a bad habit. And this is what passes as supportive? Even though none of those statements are really true. It's not a bad habit, it's a fantastic habit. Unless, like anything, you overdo it. It's way different than cigarettes, mainly not linked to lung cancer. And no more dangerous than alcohol. Try way, way, way less dangerous. Somehow this is the year when everything from socialism to mass deportation is on the table. And voters love the authentic guys who speak their minds. But when it comes time for Congress to consider common sense pot legislation, it's like smoking a joint with Woody Harrelson. They just won't pass it. And I'll tell you why. Because pot is not like gay marriage. With gay marriage, no one stood to lose money if the law changed. But the war on drugs keeps billions flowing to DEA agents and police and prisons. And legal weed would mean Americans had an alternative to altering their mood by downing OxyContin and Budweiser. Or as Rush Limbaugh calls it, lunch. I was reading recently about a guy named Raymond Schwab from Kansas. He's a Gulf War veteran who wanted to move to Colorado to treat his chronic pain and PTSD, because while the VA gave him lots of prescription drugs, for him, pot is the only thing that actually works. So Raymond thought moving to Colorado, where pot is legal and he could even grow it, was a great idea. Kansas? Not so much. They got wind of the move and took away his children. Now, I'm not a big fan of children. But I believe if you like yours, you should get to keep them. Maybe that's my New York values talking. But this is what happens when pot is legal in some states, sort of legal in others, and completely illegal in places like Kansas, where frankly they could use some. We can't leave this up to the states, because states' rights is always code for taking away rights. And since liberals have never accepted states' rights as an excuse to deny black people education or voting or outlaw gay marriage or abortion, why do they accept it with this? When only some people have it and some don't, that's not equality, that's Wi-Fi. I can't think of another example of a drug that's legal in one state but not in another. It's not a tenable situation because when I leave Colorado, Oregon, Washington, or Alaska, my back pain doesn't go away, or whatever it is I have. I'm kidding. I use medical marijuana because my third eye has glaucoma. And you know, it's acting up right now. Maybe I should...
So right now, Bill is lighting up a joint right on the show, taking a few puffs.
Maybe I should treat it. This is private property, and I do have a card, so... In conclusion, please remember... Please remember that legalizing pot is a long way from a done deal. I know you're tired, I am too, of making the same old, obvious pot arguments, like how pot is less dangerous than other legal adult activities. But somehow you can drink alcohol, you can smoke cigarettes, you can do that thing where you cut off your oxygen with a belt and masturbate. Which is not only dangerous, but take it from me, it'll get you kicked out of Macy's menswear like that.
Anyway, so again, that was from Bill Maher's YouTube channel. They put it up, so the content is available, and it was very interesting. With using humor, he made a lot of really interesting points. Now, we have progressed, but we still have problems in this industry. I took a little clip from a video where a mom was talking about their child with Dravet syndrome, and she is pleading to President Obama to reschedule cannabis.
Well, I have a question
Yes.
for President Obama, and that is, why not just issue an executive order to reschedule cannabis? Right now, cannabis is scheduled as DEA Schedule 1, which means it has no medicinal value, and it has the highest penalties on a federal level if someone is caught with it. When it's Schedule 1, it also means it's illegal to research it, so none of the universities in states that don't have state laws can research it. So if instead of waiting around for Congress, which is like the biggest, slowest moving ship, why not just issue an executive order and say, hey, lives are at stake here. Let's reschedule this. Let's get people access to it. Let's get people out of jail, and let's benefit from it. My son is able to benefit from it. That's extremely lucky. How many Americans are not?
It's just a shame that people have to either move or not get access to this medicine because it is not nationalized, and it should be a federally nationalized medical program. And what and how can that happen? Here is a clip about what the president should do to declassify marijuana.
While legalizing marijuana as a matter of federal law would take an act of Congress, President Obama can decriminalize it. He can do this by moving it out of Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, which is reserved for substances that have no medical purpose and have a high potential of abuse, and therefore have high criminal penalties attached to their mere possession. Virtually all marijuana-related arrests are handled by state and local law enforcement. The Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA, simply lacks the resources to enforce the federal ban across all 50 states. That's why the Justice Department decided not to fight the legalization of marijuana in the handful of states that have taken that step. President Obama, without rewriting any laws or stepping outside his constitutional authority, can direct the Attorney General to start the process of reclassifying marijuana as a Schedule 4 or 5 substance, or declassifying it altogether. Reclassifying marijuana as a Schedule 3 substance or lower would have significant benefits for the budding marijuana industry and individual users. For example, The Internal Revenue Code prohibits the deduction of business expenses that relate to Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 trafficking. The Gun Control Act of 1968 prevents the sale of ammunition and firearms to the unlawful users of any controlled substance. A conviction for possessing a controlled substance can bar students from getting loans. And the rules are even stricter for public housing. Declassifying marijuana would solve all of these problems, but even merely reclassifying it would make it easier for legal businesses to access the full economy and reduce violent crime. Marijuana deregulation sits squarely within the control of the executive. The president should use his executive powers to allow for intelligent enforcement of drug policy without eroding the rule of law.
So it is possible. It needs to get done, although President Obama has said that it's not on his radar at this point in time, which is very disappointing to hear that. Everybody seems to want to pass the buck and let somebody else go through this. But there's a lot of problems in our industry, be it the medical or recreational. And this report is from Colorado about banking and money laundering and the government. So things have to change in order to have this industry run smoother or smoothly.
Marijuana businesses are thriving in our state, but many in the industry say there's a crisis happening.
Colorado,
Some
by the
wonder
way.
if the federal government's trying to force the businesses to commit financial crimes so the government can then shut them down. Tonight, cannabis in Colorado, the marijuana growing pains you haven't heard about. At marijuana businesses like The Spot in Pueblo West, money's flowing in fast. But since marijuana is federally illegal and banks are regulated by the federal government.
We've had the opportunity to have bank accounts. They might last a week, they might last 3 weeks, but they have all been shut down.
Many pot businesses are forced to deal in cash only. This year in Colorado alone, the marijuana industry is expected to hit $1 billion in sales.
They are now, in many cases, having to take somewhat extreme measures to find ways to deal with this cash. And obviously, in a criminal environment, the ways to do that involve money laundering. Taylor
West is the deputy director of the National Cannabis Industry Association.
These are businesses that are working very hard to be upstanding citizens and follow all of the laws, and they're kind of being thwarted at every turn by this particular crisis.
Some in the industry, afraid to go on camera, tell me that it seems like the federal government wants them to launder money, so the government can then come in and shut them down. Others say it may be much simpler than that.
So if you can't bank and you're expected to pay your taxes, you kind of wonder, are they trying to make the system fail on the back end?
And what about those taxes? The government's expected to take in more than $120 million in pot taxes this year in Colorado. No questions asked when that money hits the banks.
But when it comes to the businesses themselves, they're being turned away. They're having existing bank accounts shut down. In many cases, individuals will have their bank accounts shut down simply for being associated with a business.
So it is kind of a double standard by all means. It's funny how it's, I guess, good for the goose, but not good for the gander in that situation.
With many banks afraid to do business with the federally illegal business of pot, some business owners are now storing their cash in large purchases, like homes and boats, hoping for the day the federal government falls in line with states like Colorado.
This is a situation that isn't going to get fixed unless Congress takes action.
And you should know, I have confirmed, there are banks in our state allowing marijuana businesses to bank with them. The banks, though, are so concerned about federal regulators, they typically don't do business with any shop that has cannabis or marijuana in its name or logo. And no one wanted to talk on camera or even have their name used for this report because they say they're afraid of being targeted by the federal government.
So the federal government is not allowing banking right now, but you know what? They are collecting tons and tons of money on taxes at the same time, and so it does need to change. With legalization for medical and recreational, there's still all kinds of problems. I mean, we have a pretty good medical program here in New Mexico, but still, because it's not national, people have to leave the state. Even though we have a program here, there's an Albuquerque baby who's made history with cannabis oil at a Colorado hospital. They had to go from New Mexico, where they couldn't get this kind of treatment, to Colorado. Here's this report.
An Albuquerque couple is fighting to save their 2-month-old daughter. She's had seizures since she was born, and doctors can't find the cause. So the family left New Mexico to pursue a controversial treatment in Colorado. News 13's Marissa Lucero spoke to the family this evening.
Dean, the family made history today in Colorado. Their daughter, Amelia Nunez, is the youngest patient at the hospital to receive cannabis oil, a treatment known as Charlotte's Web. It's been a rough start.
He found her unresponsive.
For 2-month-old Amelia Nunez.
Her heart stopped twice on us, and that was probably the hardest part.
2 days after bringing her home from the hospital in Albuquerque, the Nunez family had their first scare.
It did come to the point a couple times that they did have to resuscitate her.
She was admitted to Presbyterian Hospital, but doctors there couldn't figure out what was causing her to have seizures.
If she's not on medication every hour to having one every hour to every hour. So it's about 15 seizures a day.
So they flew her to the Children's Hospital in Aurora, Colorado, where she's been for the last 2 months.
She does have a rare form of epilepsy. They don't know exactly what type of epilepsy she has.
Her family says doctors are treating her with several different types of medications. In the meantime, they've been searching for another alternative.
The medication that she's on is really hard for her liver and stuff like that, so we're trying to use something different that it's not so bad on her body.
The family started looking into something called Charlotte's Web.
They've never administered it in the NICU.
It's a cannabis oil known to treat epilepsy in toddlers and children. The THC has been taken out so children don't get high. But at 2 months old, Amelia would be the first and the youngest patient to receive this type of treatment at the hospital. It's controversial.
I think I sat about a good 3 weeks fighting with the doctors and trying to talk them into giving me the okay.
Today, doctors gave that okay.
For us to get the approval for it to be administered while she's in the NICU and being inpatient is kind of like the miracle.
Although doctors gave that okay, they are not allowed to administer the oil. The family has to give the doses. They say the nurses already noticed a difference in her being more alert than usual. Back to you.
Okay, Marissa, thank you. The family plans to stay in Colorado for 4 months of treatments. To learn more or to help the family, go to our KRQE app. This
is why we need national medical cannabis. It's just not fair to put people through this. At the same time we're progressing, here's a report from New Hampshire, where they are prosecuting a cancer patient for growing his own meds.
I spoke with Robert Zadrata today, and he declined to talk about the criminal charges, but says that he is hopeful that this will all be resolved. And he is adamant the marijuana he was growing was for him alone, the only thing that gives him some relief.
Both in their 60s, Robert and Valerie Zadrata were shocked when police raided their home back in October. The couple arrested and charged with manufacturing marijuana with the intent to sell. But talking with Robert Zadrata outside his home Thursday, the 65-year-old says he suffers from tongue cancer and marijuana is the only thing that gives him any relief. He has chronic neuropathic pain, and it sometimes takes him an hour to eat a child-sized portion of food. Today, he and his wife are out on bail, and their case has been continued until later this month. Mr. Zadrata told us he now has a state-issued medical marijuana ID card, which will allow him to get it once dispensaries open in New Hampshire. Under the new state law, those who qualify for medical marijuana can only have 2 ounces at any given time. Police say Zadrata had 7.5 pounds, but he believes it was far less marijuana. He says due to the pain, it's difficult for him to smoke it, so he planned on cooking with it, which does require higher quantities. But regardless of the amount, there's no grow-your-own provision in the state law.
Now, we did speak with the Atkinson Police Chief, Al Brackett, who said police stand by their actions, and he says at the time there was no reason to believe that it was being used for medical purposes. We did reach out to Zadrata's attorney, too, but we have yet to hear back from him. Reporting live, Heather Hamill, WMUR News 9.
So, prosecuting a cancer patient. How wonderful is that? New Hampshire, live free or die, right? Things have to change. Another change. Here's a Nevada veteran who's denied medication due to using medical marijuana. I thought this thing was straightened out. I thought if you lived in a state where medical cannabis is legal, that they can't deny you these meds, but it's still going on. Some doctors, at least with the VA, are still not allowing. Listen to this story. It's quite upsetting, actually.
Local veteran says he's being denied critical pain meds by the VA because he uses medical marijuana.
The reason? Well, the feds still see marijuana, even medical marijuana, as illegal, even though here in Nevada and 22 other states, it's approved to be used. So 8 News Now anchor Paul Johnsich is here with this man's dilemma.
Yeah, the VA's been giving Mike Potter pain meds like morphine and hydrocodone for years, and like many veterans, he also uses medical marijuana to treat his anxiety. Suddenly, last week, the VA put its foot down, demanding that Mike stop using marijuana or get cut off from his pain meds.
After serving in the Marines, 63-year-old Mike Potter says he's been open and honest with his VA doctors about using medical marijuana to treat his anxiety and PTSD. He says the VA docs never seem to have a problem with it.
And even my doctor said, there's no problem with it. See here, you got a card, you won't have any problem. And it's been in my records for 15 years.
Then, last week, something changed.
Next thing I know, I got a big problem.
Doctors demanded that Mike stop using medical marijuana, and if they found any in his system, they'd hold back the morphine and hydrocodone they've been giving him for pain that has left him permanently disabled.
They took me off him for a week. I was going through withdrawals. I was having palpitations. Thought I was going to have a stroke. Really did, or another heart attack. And I couldn't take it. I don't want to stop the marijuana because the marijuana helps me with so many of my other problems. They're dealing with the pain with the opiates. Well, I've got other problems, my anxiety and my panic attacks, which the marijuana calms me down. It helps me sleep.
The helpful effects of marijuana are such a big part of Mike's life. He's invested thousands of dollars in equipment to legally grow his own and attended conferences to learn how to use it in his cooking.
I can use the extra virgin olive oil with the marijuana infused into it on a slow cooker. You put it in there along with a bunch of other herbs, and you can use it to cook your fish, your chicken, and numerous things as opposed to using just straight oil.
Now Mike has 2 choices: quit marijuana or go outside the VA and find a private doctor for which he will have to pay. And he doesn't think it's fair.
Today, the VA responded to this story, saying their official policy does not prohibit veterans who use medical marijuana from also getting painkillers from the VA. But each doctor makes their own decision. Mike recently switched doctors at the VA, which might help explain what happened. Right now, Representative Joe Heck is co-sponsor of House Bill 667 that would help bridge the gap between veterans in medical marijuana states like Nevada and VA docs who still consider marijuana illegal.
How dare they treat veterans that way? It's absolutely ridiculous. It has to change. Obama's got to get on this and stop his bullshit. It's just very sad. These people put their lives on the line for us, and they give them crap when they come home and they have PTSD and other afflictions. Anyway, we'll be right back after this with our conversation, not an interview, but a conversation with Adam Miller from Australia.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Okay, so we're back, and about a week and a half ago, I was just having a conversation with a gentleman that we linked up, with that LinkedIn site, and he's Adam Miller from Australia, and we just started talking a little bit, and it got pretty interesting, so I figured I'd roll some tape on it, and I asked him if it was okay, and of course he said yes, and his, by the way, his website is www.buddingtech, that's buddingtech.com, with information about what's going on in Australia. So we're just going to jump right into this conversation. It's not really an interview, and I hope you find it interesting. I certainly did. Here's Adam Miller and me. As far as medical cannabis is concerned, medical marijuana, and legalization for adults is concerned, they're really two different industries, and they need to operate sort of under separate type of rules and so forth. You have to make sure that if legalization happens for adults, that there be a medical industry, because there's different needs for patients than there are for people who want to use it as a recreation. You know what I mean? So it's real important that the medical industry be well represented and be really medical. You know, it's no bullshit. This is like some really good medicine for people.
I agree.
So that's just something strong. And the other thing about legalization, be it for medical or recreational, is there always must be the legislation to allow people to grow their own plants. Okay, you're not freeing that plant if people aren't allowed to grow it. It's harmless to be able to grow it yourself. You know, so that's, I think, important for any new country or state in the United States when they legalize, for them to keep all that very in the forefront.
Australia is looking into that. So there was a bill that was released in 2015 through Victoria, the Victorian Law Reform, which is a massive document which outlines various options for legal frameworks that can be introduced to Victoria, as to how Australia would follow Victoria's lead into a legalized medical cannabis market. And some of the options are setting up a regulatory body that oversees everything that happens in the market. They hand out the licenses, they create best practices for manufacturing, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way of doing it. The other way they were going to do it is potentially just doing it all through government and having one single entity to grow. But that kind of screws things up for anyone who A, wants to personally grow for themselves, and or B, wants to set up their own facility. And it's very limiting and restricting, and it also means that pricing is quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Pricing isn't going to be competitive because it's one single entity.
Yes, you don't want monopolies, you don't want oligopolies. You know what? You can really build an economy and put people to work by letting these little guys, have their own grows and dispensaries, and I mean, obviously, big money's going to come in, just like it has in Canada and here in the United States. But there'll always be like a boutique niche industry, and especially for medical. Okay, I think people are going to. It's just important. Washington State and Colorado both have some problems right now with their medical programs because they're making the medical programs more restrictive, and they have an adult program at the same time. So there's some problems. You just really has to be set up so that the medical can flourish under their own rules, so to speak, and the adult use can flourish under theirs. It's not one or the other, you know.
Yeah, otherwise you get a situation like California where people go in and, I've got chronic pain, and anyone and everyone can get a license. And unfortunately that creates an issue because all of the data that you are building isn't accurate data. It is...
Well, I would leave California out as an example because of what you just said. California made it harder for other states to actually pass medical cannabis laws because of the fact that it was so loose. But you know what? It should be loose, and it should be recreational, okay? But there's always that medical industry, okay? Big pharma is going to come in, and tobacco, and they're going to have their own brands and their own stuff. They're going to be around, but there'll always be the little boutique industry, whether it's in recreational or medical. But I think that the medical industry is going to be just as huge because of its importance. Okay, when you just mentioned chronic pain, well, I mean, obviously everybody can claim they have chronic pain because nobody can prove that you're not feeling it. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, it is a great medicine for people with chronic pain because they're getting off of all those fucking pharmaceuticals that harm you, opiates and all that stuff. People are, you know, if you've been reading all this stuff, like if you're following me on my Facebook, I post a lot of interesting articles, and you know, the pharmaceutical companies are upset because 80% people get off of 80% of their meds by using cannabis. You know, so they are. I know people that are getting off of 30 pills a day, different kinds of pills, at different times a day, and they just use cannabis now.
It's an incredible medicine, and the fact that you've got these benzo, diazepam, lorazepam, temazepams, they're all readily available, and you're able to buy them over the counter at a pharmacy, and they have more harmful effects on the human body. And the funny thing is they have their own rehab clinics to remove people from the addiction that they create through the medicine, whereas you have this medical plant, this plant that has specific types of cannabinoids that interact with our system, that comes from nature, non-addictive, harmless, no reported deaths. And yet this, not only is there a stigmatism behind it that it's been created by government, but there is not enough push for education programs, in my view, to help public understand the benefits of what this medicine can actually do. It makes no fucking sense.
You know, I worked the front end of a dispensary for 2 years. I managed the dispensary, and I dealt with the patients and counseled them and so forth. And it really is a miracle for a lot of people. Seriously, I've seen, you know, what it can do for many different conditions. So it's very exciting to see where all this is going to go in the next few years when the United States is able to do studies in other countries other than Spain and you know, the Netherlands and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see what else they're going to be discovering about this plant now that they're allowing people to use it and to study it.
Yeah, for in Australia, there's still a very conservative government, and they are very much in the mindset that we need to be rigorously testing this medicine. So this year, the approved symptoms or ailments are chronic pain, terminally ill, and epilepsy are the three main areas that they're going to be focusing treatments on in studies. But, you know, in the near future, we're hoping for the other ailments which cannabis can assist, you know, with inflammation, regeneration of cells,
brain cells, right? It regenerates brain cells. PTSD is very important. There's so much PTSD, people affected by that out there, that it's very important. That's one of the big conditions that needs to be fought for. Okay, PTSD and Parkinson's and ALS and Huntington's disease, and you know, there's this. You know, I have a friend with Parkinson's disease. He hadn't smoked in years, and actually didn't even like it. You know, he was against pot, and he's in his 60s now, and I got him to try it. You know, and now he's in the program, and you know, he could be, you know, shaking like this. I don't know if you can see me. Where's my hand? He could be shaking, and he takes one puff, and like 10 seconds later, you know, he's done, and he can go work. He can do his stuff, and it's amazing. It's amazing what it does for that.
I've got a funny story. So, you know, one of the diseases that it also addresses is anorexia.
Oh yeah.
And it's very interesting. My mother suffers from anorexia, severe anorexia, for the last however many years, and she's been in and out of hospital for the last 9 years. And last year, I brought her some cannabis oil in a vaporizer, because she's very attached to the stigmatism behind it. So she's seen my brother smoke vaporizers, so she, you know, thinks that's okay. And I said, Mum, just, you know, smoke this. And within an hour after smoking it, she was stuffing her face with food and laughing, you know. And I haven't seen my mother do that
Fabulous.
in years. And the clinics she goes to, the hospital she's in, they're not able to get her to do that with the medicines that they put into her body. And with a few simple tokes of the vaporizer, it's as if the disorder didn't exist.
And so how many times a day do you think she would need to do that? You're talking about maybe a couple of puffs, right? A couple of puffs is all, very little.
I would say she had 3 puffs. So I would say one in the morning, early morning, afternoon, late afternoon, maybe so 7 times a day, 2 to 5 puffs, and then that's it. So imagine curing someone of a disease with such a low dosage of medical cannabis. I mean, obviously this was good quality. This was very high quality cannabis oil, but nonetheless. Observing the effects that it had was profound.
That's interesting because my mom is 87 years old and I take care of her, and she claims that she never feels a high from it, and she's in the program here. I mean, it's perfectly legal because she's in the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico, as I am. And she claims I've given her the greatest bud in the world, even hits off of an oil vaporizer, and she never claims she feels anything at all by it, which is okay because she's still getting the medicinal stuff, but she'll never admit to being high. Did your mom? Is she getting to the point to where she feels a high effect, or is she just?
She definitely felt it. She definitely you could see in the way she was behaving. After I spoke with her, I told her what it was, and she was okay, but again, still that stigmatism behind it. She doesn't want to continue doing it, but slowly and surely I'm showing her more evidence, more research, more people who are activists in the space who are talking positively and for medical cannabis, and slowly that stigmatism is breaking down, because imagine growing up being told that this is evil constantly, and that anyone who does it is a lowlife or is a this or a that. That's years of mind programming that needs to be addressed. So that's just my mother with gentle massaging for me. So
how long has she been using it now for her anorexia?
No, she's still working on that. She hasn't. I've only been able to manage successfully get her to use it once or twice. But without a structured program and without medical support, so someone who's an actual doctor saying that this is good and this is okay, she's reluctant to accept this as a medication. But yesterday I was speaking to her about it again, and she's very receptive, and it's only a matter of time before it's something that I believe she'll integrate into her life.
Wow, that's it's good to introduce people like this in a slow manner. Actually, if they have a bad experience the first time they eat a brownie or they smoke something and it's too much, they'll never go back to it. I had a friend of mine whose sister had MS, and gave her a piece of a brownie and everything was fine. And then they decided, of course, like the old story says, eat another piece, and that was just too much. Edibles are, I'm sure you're familiar with edibles, they're a whole different thing. But I mean, even with smoking it, I find that when people say, it can't be good for you can't smoke anything and put it in your lungs, it's got to cause you cancer, it's got to be bad. But I always cite those articles, those studies that they found where they studied 5,000 men, and they actually found that people that smoked cannabis actually had better lung function and lung volume. It actually improves lung function and lung volume and does not cause cancer or lung cancer. So that's, as soon as someone says, I can't smoke it, it's blah, blah, blah. And of course you tell them that, and then you tell them vaporizing is not smoking. It's, and so that's, how to convince people. But getting into it slowly is really the best way.
I find a structured approach with supported documents and education and just empathetic understanding. A lot of people are unfamiliar with how it works, what it is, why it's beneficial, and it's just a conversation to say, look, this is what This is what the plant is. This is what THC is. This is what CBD is. Here's what the endocannabinoid system is. That's how it works in your body. Here are some studies that have shown that this works. Why don't we give it a go and see how you feel? And if there's anything that you don't like, we can figure out what is a better alternative, because there are different strains with different effects. It's not as if it's something like alcohol where it's a very, stock standard effect where, we already know what the end outcome will be. This is a very sacred plant that's been used for thousands of years for healing purposes. And there's a reason why it's been used for thousands of years for healing purposes, because it heals the body. Mm-hmm. And if there's something that isn't working for you, there's probably a way to get around that, whether that's through eating, vaporizing, smoking it. There are so many ways to integrate this into your system. So, it's just about understanding and educating and being very empathetic towards the individual and the group, because there's a lot of groups that need to be educated as well, not just the individuals.
Yes, lawmakers need to be educated, and of course doctors need to learn about the endocannabinoid system and educate themselves. That's a problem. We still, I'm in a state of New Mexico in the United States here where we've had a medical program here since 2007. It really got going in 2009, but still, there's doctors that will refuse to make the recommendation for their patient who wants to use cannabis because they don't understand it and they don't get it and they're just not going to deal with it. So the educating the doctors, educating the law enforcement people, because there's still these guys that were brought up, saying that cannabis was evil and it's bad and it's a terrible drug and it's as bad as cocaine and heroin, and they refuse to believe that there's medicinal value to it. I watched an interview today that I'll play the audio from on my show this Saturday. A cop who just says, "Listen, this is not good. I'm against it. It's he doesn't believe in the medicinal value." So there's a lot of education and generations of people that need to be informed so that they can make a better decision than they were brought up on, just like you were saying.
Yeah, well, Schedule 1, no medical benefits. So that is a very ignorant statement and quite a dangerous one as well, because you are polluting the minds of generations of people to believe that something that does have significant value does not. It's quite backwards in every way, shape, and form. I don't understand it, and I can see how it is damaging. And the sad thing is there are many lives that could have been saved if people were willing to take off their naive, ignorant glasses.
When I think,
go, okay, look.
I'm sorry. When I think of the lives, like you said, that could have been saved, and people's lives been lengthened and pain not suffered. Our government, our shithead government here, has known since the 70s that it shrinks tumors. Okay? And look at, all these years, 80 years of prohibition since the 1930s, when it was a medicine, it was listed as a medicine in the pharmacopoeia that we had here and around the world. Just millions and millions of lives could have been saved and just had better quality of life. So it's sad that governments, I don't know what your government's been doing the last 50 years, but our government's just been hiding the benefits and at the same time saying it's got no medicinal value and keeping it at a Schedule 1. Do you have a schedule of drugs where you live in Australia?
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do.
So it's the same?
I believe I'll have to check, but I do believe it is a Schedule 1 drug. But I'll confirm that in a moment.
Are you sitting at a cafe?
No, I'm sitting at a co-working space.
Oh, okay. Because I saw some people walking. I didn't know if you were inside or outside, but.
No, I got plants. But yeah, it is a Schedule 1 drug across Australia. So what I was also going to say, which further complements your talk about it saving lives. Not only on a medical level, but how many people have been incarcerated how many families have been destroyed, how many lives have been jeopardized because of a small amount of a plant that, to our knowledge and to our understanding, is a healing sacrament. So it's really quite upsetting that people have not acknowledged this. And the government, I don't know about our government, but I certainly know about the government in America, and they have not really been doing right by the people. And as Bill Hicks, a once famous comedian, said, it's not a war on drugs, it's a war on personal freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, I loved him, man. He was great, and it's just a shame that we didn't know it was a medicine when he could have used it to kill some cancer cells,
Yeah, exactly. So many people in our generation who died before their time, or who passed before their time, could have used this to heal themselves. I mean, it helps sustain homeostasis, our body's ability to regulate itself regardless of external environments. It's it's incredible. I can't speak highly enough of it.
Yeah, well, let's stay in touch, and let's do this every once in a while and update each other and talk about what's going on down there. How soon do you think Australia will have medical? And does it have to be? Can it be done nationwide, or does it have to be done by whatever? I don't know if you have states. I really don't know a lot about your country.
No, that's fine. I'd love to do another chat with you in the near future. February would be most ideal, because in February they're releasing a federal bill. What Australia is looking to do is do a federal legislation across all states in Australia. So unlike America, from the initial implementation of medical cannabis, it will be legalized on a federal level, not on a state level. So that's what we're looking to achieve in February. So once February is passed, I feel you and I will be in a better position to chat about what's going on in Australia and how it's evolved since last year, because really it exploded last year, and in 2 years Australia has come this far. So I do pay homage to the Australian government for keeping their finger on the pulse. That it's just still a little broken in certain areas, because New South Wales, which is one of the political powerhouse states, they are very conservative and they're taking their sweet time. Whereas you look at Victoria, which is a less conservative state, they're looking to legalize this year. So it's really interesting. The next month's going to be a really interesting play for medical cannabis in Australia.
Wow.
Because there's a lot happening.
That's really exciting. So I look forward to hearing more about that. Before I go, are you guys smoking the same kind of strains that we are here? And that weird 45% THC strain that they found deep in Australia, was that a bunch of bullshit, or is that real?
I couldn't tell you. It's so hit and miss here in Australia, because there's no quality control. There's no real process to grow. You get what you get, and sometimes you get incredible stuff, and other times you get absolute rubbish. So fortunately, Australia has perfect weather for growing in multiple states. So it does grow a very good quality, high potent bush strain, or bush marijuana. But from a hydroponic standpoint, it's hit and miss. You can't tell.
Yeah, well, you know what? Not everybody is good at growing, and indoors, under lights or hydroponic under lights, it's tough, and there's a learning curve, and it could take people years to get to the point to where they're turning out some connoisseur stuff. But hey, man, this was great. Let's do this every once in a while, and I'll probably play this on my show in a couple weeks, because I think we had a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I feel that would be great. And if you would like to do a retake once February hits with a little bit more juicy stuff, I'd be happy to chat then too.
Absolutely. We'll do a part 2.
Beautiful, mate.
Right on.
Take care, and
All
it's
right.
a pleasure to speak to you.
Anytime you see me on Skype, feel free to hit me up if you want to talk about anything. This was great. Thanks for reaching out.
My absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you for responding.
My pleasure. Have a good afternoon.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, and so we had that great conversation, and just to update you a little bit, marijuana legalization comes to Australia. This is dated February 11th, just a few days ago. A bill that was just introduced is about to make Australia the next nation to completely legalize marijuana for medical use nationwide. The bill was introduced to Parliament on February 10th by the Liberal Party. The bill will amend the Narcotic Drug Act of 1967 to allow marijuana as a medicine. Experts say that the bill is guaranteed to become law, as even the opposition party immediately pledged their support for it. So that's fantastic. Anyway, Adam Miller from Australia, thank you very much. His website is buddingtech.com, and we'll keep you updated on what's going on down under, so to speak. We'll be right back after this.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Thank you once again, Adam Miller. We look forward to speaking to you again. And I also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be a guest on this show, if you have a website that's informational, a product for medical cannabis or recreational cannabis, write us at info@mmjradio.com, info@mmjradio.com. And if you'd like to listen to some old shows, we've been doing this as our 7th season. You can go to mmjradio.com. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is LSLove88. On SoundCloud, audio only at MMJ Radio. Also on Spreaker, MMJ Radio. CannabisTube.net. Also on Spreaker, it's the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network, as well as iHeartRadio with Time for Hemp. On Now TV, channel 937. Also 420radio.org and the Pothead Universe Radio, and hopefully more coming soon.
The medical marijuana. Shalom.